A lot of discussion right now in boxing about this quote Tom and Jerry fights, right? And should there be a no running rule and all? I just have to start with one thing, Raheem.
Uh,
Tom and Jerry's fights were pretty fucking violent. For one, I don't know if that's the best point of reference. I'm serious. Go on YouTube for all the youngsters who didn't have to grow up with that boring ass Tom and Jerry. But Jerry almost murdered Tom in every single episode. Okay, it wasn't if he's setting traps and playing keep away. He ultimately Mayweather Hattoned Tom in every single episode. It ended with a brutal knockout, a brutal ass kicking. I just have to make that one joke. Like we don't want Tom and Jerry fights. No, you're right because one fighter might die because it's not a cartoon.
it's a
Okay,
very
so
one-sided fight, actually.
yeah,
It's Cambosa's Richie Rich. But if we're talking Tom and Jerry and we're digging into the crates, like deep analysis, Sean, I believe Tom and Jerry were best friends. I believe they were best friends.
really. I don't recall. Yeah, I think so. I think right,
But
right.
here's why, right? Because the reason that no one actually died on either side of that nonstop rivalry is
Besides
because
it being a cartoon.
wanted to live in the house. And it was really the cat protecting the mouse in that he had to chase the mouse to get fed and to stay in the good graces of the owner. But he didn't want to kill Jerry. He didn't want Jerry to actually die. And Jerry had to fight him off enough to survive those attacks. And he never actually hurt or killed Tom either. And the reason that
And you're
this goes
arguing
on
not
forever,
out of incompetence or being outwitted by the mouse.
well, he is outwitted by the mouse. The mouse knows what's going on, though. But the reason he can continue to slip through the cracks is because there was just a little bit a lack of finishing effort
Mhm.
on Tom's
Killer
part.
instinct.
He doesn't want Jerry to actually die. They both want to live in the house, and this back and forth kind of thing. It's all better than it's more like Democrats and Republicans. They make you think
We
this
actually
fucking
need each
fight
other.
is slogging down, and they're trying to kill each other. But at the end of the day, they both want to live in the fucking house. That's what's really going on. Meanwhile, we're distracted by all this back and forth and who's killing who and who's hitting who with the rake and plugging up the hole and who's running the house.
But
But
next
really,
Saturday morning, there they are.
back
New
at
episode. Tune in. Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Now, this smaller ring situation, I mean, the size of the ring can be negotiated, right? Fighters can decide.
Caleb Plant got a bigger ring than normal when he fought David Benavidez.
Right. So this is not unheard of. We can't be like, oh, why are you running the sport? This is undone. This is never, this is something that is on the table for negotiation. And I do think that being the promoter, providing the purse money, having the network deal, putting the fights together, being responsible for selling the tickets, to a degree, for sure, you can dictate what the framework of the fight is. Having to decide what size the ring is, to me, as far as your authority as the promoter, isn't that much different than deciding what size the venue is. It's what kind of show you're putting on, right? Now, if you do enforce a limit to how big the ring can be, so fighters can't negotiate a bigger ring. It can only be this big or smaller, or maybe it can only be this big. Period, and we take that off the table of negotiations. You do then change the sport fundamentally. However, that is something that will then have to be taken into account for every fight, and it does benefit certain styles over others. It can't be said that it doesn't. So in a way, you are absolutely putting your finger on the scale for certain fighters and making it a more difficult challenge for other fighters. Maybe not because you're picking that particular individual because you want to advantage him, but because you want to do something that you think makes the fights more entertaining, gives the audience more value for money. And if you make the ring smaller, then there will be more engagement, not less. I get that, but you have to admit and understand what you're buying into. You are now saying that the parameters of what is possible in there will be changed fundamentally at the rules level. There are certain things that you need a bigger ring to do, and there are certain things that you cannot do, or you can do better even with a smaller ring with a limited amount of space for your opponent. And the fantastic analysts out there can decide who's advantaged by this and who's disadvantaged by this, but accept that if this is something that you want, that this is what you're going to get. It will fundamentally change the styles that make the fights.
In short, when we're talking about should there be a no running rule, and those kind of, no, I'm good. I'm good. I've loved boxing more than half my life. It's done pretty well despite all its problems for the last 150 years with the rules the way they are. So I'm good. I don't want to change them. Now, I'm not being intellectually dishonest. Recently, there's been a crazy I mean, three of the top six worst recorded CompuBox fights happened this year in a 40 plus year history. So I get it if it's like, I don't know, man, this is starting to become a bigger, a more common problem. I get it. We're in a year where we've had a absurd percentage of bad fights make history in CompuBox and everything. And of course, there is a big difference between what Richardson Hitchens was doing against George Kambosos and what Haney did against Ramirez, or what Andre Durrell did on an undercard in HBO a long time ago that I can't forget, or what Stevenson and De Los Santos did. I understand those are fights nobody wants to see. Although I morbidly enjoy them sometimes. It's one of those, the movie's so bad that it's actually good things for me. I begin to enjoy how boring it is. I'm a purist, but so, and then I understand that other leagues, the NFL, NBA, they all implement rules that are gradually designed to make more scoring happen. So this would be the equivalent to that, making a rule that
fundamentally change the game. If you shorten the
right.
distance in the home plate and the furthest wall, then you're going to get more home runs. Sure, that's going to advantage certain batters and disadvantage pitchers. You're going to have, I mean, that's all I'm saying. You can decide whether it's good or bad, but understand what you're doing. If you make it harder to get a pass interference call, then you're going to change the game for the defensive back, and as opposed to how and what a receiver can get away with, where a quarterback is willing to place the ball because he could probably get a pass interference and throw something into more coverage. All of that, there is going to be a domino effect to everything. However, I do think that boxing is somewhat self-correcting, because we do look at these standout fights where there was, and I still think of them as anomalies though, even though they've been more frequent. It's because, to your point, and you've been making this point a long time, another thing that has fundamentally changed the game is the Riyadh season, the purses, the opportunity to make this kind of huge money for undercard fights. And so people want to be more preserved. They want to preserve they want to potentially get in line for that, and they don't want to take any extra risk. I think that's what we saw in the debacle in Times Square and in the Floyd Mayweather effect. It's not just all up to Turkey and Saudi. This is something that we see. You want to keep that. Whatever fighters think is the biggest, best way to get the next biggest, best check, they're going to go ahead and do that. And that's why you saw Oscar, in the final rounds against Trinidad, because he thought he had the win in the bag. So he ran for the remainder of the fight. But what happened was the criticism after that, the criticism that Shakur took, the criticism that the Times Square event took, the criticism that Skull takes, that it's self-correcting, because once you see that, and then to Turkey's point, if he doesn't reward that, all of a sudden you don't see Haney Garcia. They don't get that big, massive check. That big bag isn't waiting for them because of the stinkers. Then you're like, okay, well, that's not the shortest route to the big bag, and they'll stop doing that shit. And to your point, if you make the ring smaller, if you make the ballpark smaller, you make pass interference more common, all that kind of stuff, you'll get more offense, but just don't be shocked when there are other unintended consequences that happen to that. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I don't know exactly what this opposite and equal reaction will be, but there will be consequences. There will be changes, and they will be fundamental if you make something like this standard across boxing, that the ring can't be bigger than, what is it, 18 feet now?
Yeah.
That's going to change it.
It's too slippery a slope for me. Too subjective a thought a little bit. I get it. Like, Excessive clinching should be at some point you get a point away. If you are straight up not throwing punches and just disengaging all night, throwing 10 punches around, I get it if you get a point deducted or something, but I don't know about, there's the potential you could weaponize this against the B side. Like, oh,
Well,
we're doing
let's
Chavez
enforce the rule.
Whitaker, huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's enforce the rules that are on the books. We hear that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we should be all right if you just do that
Yes,
alone, right?
I've always said that I think the referees just have too much warning, too much patience. There's a lot of clinching, even pushing a fighter off. You know what I mean? I think is tolerated way too much. Spitting out the mouthpiece, like little shit that fighters get away with all the time. That you're only gonna get low blows, all the head hitting behind the head. Fighters will do all of that a couple of times throughout a fight if they feel like they can get advantaged by it because
And
they
when
know,
Bernard Hopkins does it, it's beautiful.
yeah, and
To
you
be
know
fair.
you're not getting the point taken the first time. You're probably not getting a point taken the second time. If it's working for you, you might even try a third time before you even start thinking about, well, I might, end up having to, lose a point if I keep this up. But depending on the referee, you can do it all night and end up just getting warnings and getting the action stopped. I think, if anything, let's look at the rules on the books and start telling the referees how many warnings they can give. I would start there. Before making the ring smaller, I would start by enforcing the boxing rules, the Queensberry rules that are already in place, and see if we can change the sport by having it fought the way it's supposed to be fought and not giving so much leeway to the referee to continuously permit things that are openly illegal. In UFC, I'm no reporter of mixed martial arts, but I watched UFC when I got time, and I liked it, along the way. And I remember when there was a lot of grappling, like there was so much grappling, and obviously I'm a striker guy, so I stopped like making an effort as much to see UFC fights at some stage. This is years ago. Even though I didn't have that many opportunities to watch it anyway, when I did have an opportunity, I would. And then there was a patch there where just everything was on the ground. People were just, running the clock out, trying to get choked, smothering the opponent, taking top control and all that shit. And I started to lose interest in the whole thing. And Dana White implemented basically their version of the no running rule. The referee will break the action, stand up, get back to fighting. He has that kind of control. And it brought me back to the sport. So I get it. It can work, and I think that saved UFC because if he hadn't done that, I don't think UFC would be as popular as big as it is now. They know what people want to see, and even though mixed martial arts, you should be able to grapple and do all that stuff because that's part of the mix. He took that shit out of the mix for a bit and said, "This is what we're focusing on," and then started giving fight bonuses. You know what I mean? I know you're no major fan of Dana White, but when you have that kind of control, you can make these kind of adjustments. I'm not sure making the ring smaller is where we should start, but I do respect Turki Alalshikh's authority in being the promoter and putting these fights on and having that kind of control. But with great power comes great responsibility. Let's think logically about what is the best way to keep boxing entertaining and to get rid of things that we don't need without making drastic dictations where they're not necessarily necessary. And the rules that are on the books, I think, can solve the problems that we have.
I do not respect his authority as much. He just got here. You just got here, and for
On his
over.
events, I'm not, what I'm saying? On his events, you can't.
Oh, no, no, no. I mean, no, the 18 by 18 ring. Hey, if you don't like it, don't agree to it. Don't take his money. Like, no one's putting a gun to your head if you don't like the 18 by 18 ring. So, no, do your thing. It's your show. But I'm good. I'm good on the no running rule. I'm good on that. I let freedom reign. This is. You're trying to be a little bit of an authoritarian there, sir. Let freedom reign. Let spontaneity. That rule wasn't implemented, and you fell in love with the shit and are spending a whole ton of your government's money on it. So just let it be what it was when you no. But it's a legit discussion. I'm not trying to shoot it down as this purist, like it's not a legit discussion. These rule changes happen in other sports and everything. I'm good. I'm good. You gotta. Not everything. When we have an issue, forget boxing. Just in the larger picture, every time you have an issue, the answer is not to just do some authoritarian limiting of rights. Like, we have this issue, guys run too much. And it's like, well, take away their right to run then. And it's like, no, don't do that. So that's my, that's my take on it. Let the public, if the public really hates that style so much, then don't support it. And
Find
and
the
all
link in the
that.
bio for new merch, right to run.
Yeah. We were
Yeah.
born to run.
Born to
Springsteen,
run.
baby. This is America.